Right, okay, so episode 11 of the Netflix of Nutrition series, and we're going to cover coping mechanisms. So, this is the perfect follow up to our last lesson that was all about the most common pitfalls. So, today we're going to talk about how to actually cope with them and what to do instead. So, behavior change is all about good planning, okay? Can't stress that one enough. So let's talk about short-term diet planning. So just as each week and month does not need to be a dieting one, neither does each day of the week. So your intake may change based on your lifestyle, work preferences, and most likely in the short term, your social calendar. This is known as non-linear dieting. Think of it as not having the same calories on each day. The major contributor to your goals will be your total calorie intake for the week and your ability to stick to it, okay? So if the average of your 7 days is a deficit, you will still lose weight. Now that is where we have spoken ad nauseum about being able to enjoy a bit of fun on the weekend, but not having that spill over into Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then starting your weekend early on a Thursday, and it turns out you're actually just dieting on a Wednesday, for example. So, but if the average of your 7 days is a surplus, you will gain weight. So yes, it's possible to completely outdo your hard work via just 1 day's worth of treats. So again, this slide has come up several times. So again, I don't want to go through it too much. But for example, you can still lose yourself that pound per week, get yourself into a 700 calorie deficit on the other 6 days, give yourself the buffer on a Saturday. There you go, job's done. Now, this is where the 5-2 diet, for example, comes in. So the deficit doesn't have to be the same every single day. Now, there's nothing magical about the 5-2 diet. It's simply just a very easy way to eliminate enough calories to get yourself in a calorie deficit. So as you can see, this example is used a Tuesday and a Friday, but it's a lot harder to eat into a calorie surplus if you're already eating 500, 600, 700 calories on a couple of days per week. Again, do the maths. Now, diet planning. So, as we have emphasized throughout the series, the best diet is going to be the one you can stick to. Although we all start with the best intentions and ironclad willpower, they can be very quickly eroded. All right. So we need a plan that allows us to keep moving forwards towards your goals, and this can be done via long-term and short-term diet planning. So, if you want some more help with this, sit down with us and we'll help you to identify the best approach. Don't just say you're going to do something. So there was a study in 2002 that looked at this. They took 242 participants through a 2-week trial to see how many times they exercised. Group 1 were asked to keep track of how frequently they exercised over the next 2 weeks. Group 2, they were asked to keep track of how frequently they exercised over the next 2 weeks and given a motivational pamphlet to read. Group 3, they were asked to keep track of how frequently they exercised over the next 2 weeks, but they were asked to formulate a plan for when and where they would do the exercise over the following week. So basically that's how the plan looked. They had to set an intention quote. So how many times a week did each group work out? Group 1 was control, Group 2 was motivation, Group 3 was intentions. Crazy, right? Insanely improved when they simply set a basic intention or a plan. And this is why we're so hot on getting you guys with your bookings, okay? So when you book your sessions, when you get them in a diary, you're far more likely to actually commit to doing it. So they had 2 to 3 times better compliance with the implementation intentions. So don't just say you're going to do something. Exactly what will you do? Where will you do it? When will you do it? How will you do it? You can write it down or just get it in the diary, okay? Granted, some of you have flexible work schedules and it's very hard to do this, but just get something down. If it has to change, we'll cope with that when it comes. That's a bridge we'll cross when we have to. But the bigger tasks can be broken down further to remove barriers. So, for example, early morning training session at 7:30 a.m. Therefore, I will need to pack my gym bag and place it by the front door the night before. I will need to place my training clothes on the floor next to my bed. I will have to take a shake for the post-training in the in the morning. So stop planning for perfect, plan for the worst case scenario. If X, then Y. If my kid, I don't know, is sick and I have to take a day off work, then what would I do when I can't get to the gym? I can do a bodyweight workout at home and I can still eat the perfect diet. Well, not even the perfect diet, I can still eat the appropriate diet, let's say. So coping strategies. What will we do if something goes wrong and has the potential to throw us off? So as I just hinted at, implement an if-then strategy, okay? So if means insert situation that could potentially throw you off, then the goal that you will get yourself directed towards the behavior you want or need to do. So if I forget my breakfast, I will order poached egg on toast at the Macro Cafe. If I run out of healthy dinners, I will get my meal out of the freezer. If I have to eat out for a client lunch, I will select protein and veggies. If the office has cake and I have a piece, then I will remove carbs from my evening meal. Simple stuff, okay? So identify the most common barriers and put an if-then strategy in place. Identify 3 to 5 of these for your most risky situations and write out an if-then plan. Now again, as I've said throughout these lessons, please don't just brush this off and say, no, I don't need to do that. I thought about it, done. Do it, write it down, get something down on paper. Like, I don't want to baby people and make it feel like school, but trust me, I know exactly what people think when they hit this kind of point. They simply want to just absorb the information and then not actually do something with it. The power is in actioning it, okay? So take some time, take 5 minutes, even just that. Write down what are the 3 to 5 most likely areas where you're going to have some kind of coping strategy in place, and then write down a solution, okay? Simply having that down on paper is going to make it so much easier for you to actually implement those things when it comes to it. Otherwise, we're just going to end up spinning our wheels, and you're going to come back to me and say, I just can't get enough water in, I don't know how. Or I just can't seem to say no when there's cake at work. Okay. Well, we've just established here that you could have had that slice of cake and just corrected yourself later in the day if you'd have had an if-then coping strategy in place, if that makes sense. So I do strongly recommend actually doing this. And of course, we've spoken ad nauseum about planning for failure and just having a fallback plan to maintain momentum. So fallbacks are another form of contingency planning, in other words, okay? So this means we can still make progress when life is tough. We can prevent the old-fashioned, F it, all or nothing type of attitude, which so many of us go through, especially when it comes to dieting. So fallback should be the absolute minimum that you know you can do when it comes to your goals. For example, if your goal is eating fruit or veg with each meal, then your fallback plan would be to eat fruit or veg at just 1 meal per day. Okay, so ideally every meal, but at bare minimum 1 meal per day. Providing an upper and lower limit to your goals removes the fixation on the perfectionist mindset that can often hinder people's progress. Now, again, this is something that I'm extremely guilty of. I'm a definite OCD perfectionist. I'd like to think I'm getting better, but you just want to try and provide yourself a range for your goals and for even for your habits, let's say. So what's the absolute minimum that you can do? And remember that we don't have to be perfect. We simply have to be better, okay? Or we have to just improve. So the psychology of adherence. So you're much more likely to get long-term change if you start small, go slow. As noted in Leo, I always say this guy's name wrong, I think, Babauta, his book, The Power of Less. It's a good book. I've got it on the shelf. Highly recommend it. If we look to change more than 3 things at once, then you have a less than 15% chance of sticking to these new changes or habits. So again, for some of you, this is going to be very appropriate. Healthier eating, training more often, stop smoking, reduce drinking. That's a very common 4 that we hear when people first sign up. You've already set yourself up for an extremely difficult overhaul, and you might end up with just 1 or 2 of those things sticking at best. Okay, so let's just be realistic from the start. So now think of the hundreds of things people try to change when starting a new diet, and it's easy to see why the vast majority of diets fail in the long term. So I just spoke about 4 bigger rocks, but again, you can even break each of those down into further things that need to change. So start small by focusing on the smallest changes that will have the biggest impact. Think kind of Pareto's law, 80-20. You should be 95% certain that you can maintain each habit. If it's lower than 95%, then you need to make the habit easier until you are almost certain that you can maintain it. If you are not sure, speak to one of us. So when it comes to planning for failure, it's all about the power of the morning and understanding ego depletion. When the energy for mental activity is low, self-control is typically impaired, which would be considered a state of ego depletion. And we want to place new habits or mentally challenging tasks at the start of the day when willpower is highest or strongest. So this will have the added bonus of starting a success cascade. So look, with this slide, let's cut a long story short. If you set yourself up to win in the morning, you're far more likely to build momentum going into the rest of the day than if you are underprepared, underserved for yourself, and then it's just going to be a cascade of chaos going on from there. So there is a summary of kind of some coping strategies, but really it all comes down to that kind of if X then Y mechanism. So I highly recommend doing that task, and then we have one more lesson in this series, and I will speak to you there.